Hello and welcome back to another chapter where we will be reviewing Chapter 2 in Anatomy and Physiology on cells. My name is Levine and I will be your host for once again this time. We once again have some learning objectives. Discuss the relevance of understanding human body system, function, and structure to conditions commonly found in the field. Name and describe two general classes of cells. Name the three basic parts of the cell. Describe the function of the cell membrane. State the arrangement of the molecules in the cell membrane. State the 5 functions of proteins in the cell membrane. And describe the different types of cell permeability. We also have define each of the cellular transport mechanisms and give an example of the role of each in the body. Diffusion, osmosis, facilitated diffusion, and active transport. Describe the function of the nucleus and chromosomes. I can't read today. Describe the cytoplasm and the role of organelles and cytosol within the cytoplasm. Describe how the cell membrane regulates the composition of the cytoplasm, and describe what happens in mitosis or cytokinesis and meiosis and the importance of each. Describe the 4 types of tissues and give general characteristics of each. Describe the function of epithelial tissues and connective tissues and relate them to the function of the body or an organ system. Name some membranes of connective tissue. List the 3 types of muscle tissues and the basic differences between them. Discuss the function of nervous tissues and list the organs made of nervous tissues. Name the organ systems of the body. Name the body regions and the structures they contain. Name the body cavities, their membranes, and examples of organs with each cavity. Explain the 4 quadrants of the abdomen and name the organs in each. So, cells are the foundation of the human body, as you might have learned in class. In less advanced forms of life, such as amoeba, these entire organisms consist of a single cell. The human body contains billions of cells, all specialized for particular functions. Protoplasm is a viscous liquid matrix that supports all internal cellular structures. Each cell is a minute mass of this colorless substance and provides a medium for intercellular transport of various substances, such as nutrients, signaling molecules, ATP, which we will learn about later, and proteins. Tissues are cells with a common job that grow close to each other. Organs are made up of the tissues that perform those interrelated jobs. Homeostasis is the stability of the body's normal internal environment, which we learned in the previous chapter. And disruption of homeostasis can have a serious impact on the entire organism. So, in the structure of the cell, we have 2 general classes. We have sex cells, also called germ cells or reproductive cells. In the sperm of the males or the oocytes, eggs or females, we have never called them oocytes. We've just called them sperms or eggs. And somatic cells, all other cells in the body. And this chapter will focus on somatic cells. 3 basic parts of a cell are the cell membrane, the nucleus, and cytoplasm. We have its organelles, which are microscopic, specialized structures that are, they perform the functions that are required by the cell. Here we have a diagram. One of the first things you might actually notice is the mitochondria, because everybody knows what the mitochondria is, because let's be honest here, kids, you haven't forgot what the hell the mitochondria is. I certainly haven't. It's the powerhouse, of course. And then we have all of the list of basically everything else. We have the cytoplasm here on the side. I was going to point at the screen, but I realized I'm not, showing it. We have the cytoplasm. We have the smooth endoplasmic oh my god. Reticulum. Oh my god. I'm losing my science brain. We have microfilaments. I remember that. Centriole, vacuole, lysosome, nuclear membrane, nucleus, chromatin, and that is all contained within the nucleus. I'm not going to go through all of these because they're basically just big words for what are in your cells. In the cell membrane, this controls the movement of substances into and out of the cell. It's much like your skin, but on a much smaller level. It is extracellular, meaning outside of the cell, and intracellular, meaning inside of the cell. Atoms make up the molecules, and composed of smaller particles are protons, and they have particles that have a positive electrical charge. We learned about this before. Electrons are negative, neutrons are uncharged. This allows, cell membrane allows a selective communication between intercellular and extracellular compartments while aiding in cellular movement. It gives the form to the cell, much like our skin. Biologic activities are conducted here, and they detect signals from the outside of the cell and transmit them inside, and they adhere to other cells when tissues form. They can be semi-permeable, which allows some elements to pass through while not allowing others to do so. Selective permeability is when only certain substances can enter or leave the cell. Lipids and proteins are primary substances that make up the cell and membranes, and usually a double layer of phospholipid molecules they're made up of phosphate portion, which is the outer surface, fatty acid portion, inner surface, and this is also called a bilayer. Proteins are periodically interrupt the lipid bilayer of cells. You can see here right here, phospholipid bilayer is right in here. Functions served by the proteins in the lipid bilayer are transporters, signal receptors, channels, and ion channels. So many things to look at. Oh my gosh. Permeability of the cell membrane. The cell membrane is selectively permeable and allows some, but not all, substances to pass through a membrane. This helps maintain homeostasis. So here we have chart A. This is small, uncharged polar molecules. This is how they get through. We have B, lipid soluble substances, and through hybocarbonation. It's how they get through. Water soluble substances, which are large uncharged polar molecules, glucose. They cannot get through. Ions cannot get through. Electrolytes, chemicals that are made up of salt or acid substances that are dissolved in the blood, act as ionic conductors when dissolved in a solvent such as water. Transport through the cell membrane. Several mechanisms allow material to pass through the cell membrane: diffusion, osmosis, facilitated diffusion, active transport, endocytosis, exocytosis. Diffusion is the movement of particles or solutes from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. If you've ever done that kind of activity where you feel if you feel a little bit of a water balloon or whatever, I'm not sure what it's called, but you feel that with a lower concentration of salt water, and then you put it in a jar of higher concentrated salt water, and you see you leave it in there for like a 24-hour period, it actually fills up over time because that barrier it has the need to draw in, and that is what diffusion is. Degree or diffusion depends on permeability of the membrane to the substance, concentration gradient, which is basically what it is. Small molecules diffuse more easily than large ones, so if you had a huge salt grain, that's not really going to go well. Watery solutions diffuse more rapidly than thicker viscous solutions. I think that's a no-brainer. Movement of a solvent from an area of low solute concentration to one of high concentration through a selectively permeable membrane is osmosis. Osmotic pressure is the measure of tendency of water to move by osmosis across a membrane. Crenation is the shrinkage of a cell that occurs when too much water moves out of the cell. It kind of looks like a raisin under a microscope. It's funny. Lysis is the swelling and bursting of a cell that occurs when too much water enters the cell, and it looks like confetti whenever it explodes. Facilitated diffusion is the process in which a carrier molecule moves a substance into or out of a cell from areas of high concentration to areas of lower concentration. Energy is not required, and the number of molecules transported is directly proportional to the concentration. So here you can see it kind of acts like, a little bridge. They rotate on an axis. The integral membrane protein right here, they want to get that sugar molecule in. They open up on the outside, let the sugar molecule in. They close, sealing off this side, and then they open back up, forcing to eject, and therefore getting the sugar molecule inside the cell. Active transport is a movement of substance against a concentration or a gradient, and this requires energy as well as some type of carrier mechanism. Active transport mechanism may exchange one substance for another. You can see this takes energy. This is a lot of stuff going on here. You need energy. You have the binding site, ATP. ATP binds with the binding site. The recognition site. That recognition site will recognize the iodide ion. Once that recognizes, it will then poop out, or just get rid of that discharge, that ADP. Filtration. Movement of water out of plasma across the capillary membrane into interstitial space caused by hydrostatic pressure. Onychotic force pulls water back into the capillary from the interstitial space. Active transport, movement of a substance against concentration or gradient, and this requires energy or some type of carrier mechanism. The movement is opposite of that of diffusion, and the mechanism may exchange one substance for another. Endocytosis is the uptake of material through cell membrane by membrane-bound droplet or vesicle that forms within the protoplasm of the cell. There are two types, phagocytosis. In endocytosis, there are two types. There are phagocytosis and pinocytosis. The form of endocytosis that involves solid particles and literally means cell eating. Pinocytosis is endocytosis of liquids or cell drinking. Exocytosis is the release of secretions from cells, and secretions accumulate within vesicles. Vesicles bind to or fuse with a membrane, and contents of the vesicles are eliminated from the cell. Examples of this are secretions of digestive enzymes from the pancreas or mucus secretion by the salivary glands. The nucleus is the largest, most visible structure inside of the cell. It contains your DNA. A cell without a nucleus will disintegrate within 3 to 4 months and contains the genetic instructions needed to synthesize the proteins that determine the cell structures and functions. It's usually around and enclosed in a double nuclear envelope, and a nuclear envelope has an inner and outer lipid membranes, has a protein lining, and allows certain molecules to exit the nucleus. Nucleoplasm is a fluid inside the nucleus that suspends the nucleus, which is, or the nucleolus, which is a mini nucleus made up of mostly RNA and protein, and the chromatin, which are loosely coiled DNA and protein fibers that condense. Cytoplasm is the matrix substance that contains all of the cellular contents between the cell membrane and the nucleus, substance in which chemical reactions occur. This makes up most of the cell's volume and suspends the cell's organelles. Cells' organelles are internal structures within the cell that carry out the processes necessary for the human body to function. This includes centrioles, cilia, flagella, and that's about it. Usually there's more, but I guess I didn't want to include those. An important function, important in the formation of the spindle apparatus, is the centrioles, spindle fibers and microtubes. Wow, okay, spindle fibers and that radiate from the centrioles. Essential in the process of cell division, they form the spindle-shaped structure needed for movement of DNA strands. Cilia are hair-like projections on the surface of a cell. Capable of motion, they move materials over the surface of the cell. In the trachea and the bronchi, which are, in your throat area, they move a layer of mucus from the lower portions of the lung to the throat. The flagellum is a tail-like microtube, that word, structure. It propels the cell, and sperm have a flagellum that propels them through the vagina and into the uterus. Swim boys is what I call them. So in ribosomes, those are organelles that contain RNA and protein. Ribosomes interact with RNA and other parts of the cell to join amino acids together to form proteins. This interaction takes place in endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum is a series of membranes in which specific proteins and fats are manufactured. The Golgi apparatus is a set of membranes within the protoplasm that is associated with the formation of various carbohydrate and complex protein molecules. Lysosomes is membrane-bound vesicles containing enzymes that function as intracellular digestive systems. Peroxisomes are similar to lysosomes, which are found in high concentrations in the liver, and they neutralize toxins such as alcohol. Mitochondria, we all love this, small rod-like organelles that function as a metabolic center of the cell. They use the process of oxidative metabolism to produce ATP, and ATP is adenosine triphosphate. I know that word for sure. The primary molecule is used by the cells to store and transfer energy. Genetic material in the nucleus. I hate this word. Deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, contained in the chromosomes. Ribonucleic acid, or RNA, is contained in the nuclei. Nuclei are spherical intranuclear structures. Cytosol is the fluid portion of the cytoplasm, contains mostly water as well as glucose, amino acid, fatty acids, ion, lipids, proteins, ATP, and waste products. The site of many chemical reactions. Shut up, steam. Cell division. Remodeling is the ongoing process of cell renewal. Cell division consists of two separate but related processes, meiosis and mitosis. Meiosis is a specialized form of cell division that occurs only when the production of mature sperm and ovum. Normally, cells contain 46 chromosomes. The diploid number, diploid, they placed the I wrong, or I did actually. They contain two sets of chromosomes. Sperm and ova contain only 23 chromosomes, the haploid number. When sperm and ovum unite, the final organism contains 46 chromosomes. Meiosis involves two consecutive cell divisions, each consisting of 4 stages. Each resulting cell has a haploid number of chromosomes. Mitosis is cytokinesis, the division of cytoplasm of a cell. All cells except egg and sperm cells can be divided by mitosis, and division must be precise. I did an entire cookie project on mitosis. It was really fun. I'm just going to put that out there. So mitosis is very simple. And basically, you can break it down into a bunch of parts as it shows here. We have the centrioles, the nucleus, and then we have the chromosomes, as shows here at the phosphase. And then you have these branchy boys. They reach out the equatorial plane, and that's when they sort of split them apart and they become chromatids. And this is the anaphase. This is called the cleavage furrow when they become, peanut shape. This is the telophase. And then the interphase, when they actually, have a split between them and they become actual cells. So yes, it was a very fun science project, and I'm glad I totally remember mitosis because it's definitely going to help me out later in life. Stages of mitosis. Stage 1, the prophase. This contains the new central pairs that move to opposite ends of the cell. Stage 2 is metaphase. Chromosomes align near the middle portion, equatorial plane between the central and spindle fibers attached to them. Stage 3, anaphase. Centromere centers of the chromosomes are pulled apart to become individual chromosomes and move towards the opposite end of the cell. Stage 4 is telophase. Chromosomes arrive at each pole, and new nuclear membranes form. I'm talking too fast. Oh my god. I need coffee. Types of tissue. Tissue groups of similar cells working together. Classified into 4 types. Epithelial, connective, muscle, and nerve. Epithelial tissue covers all of the external surfaces within the body and lines hollow organs with the body. Basement membrane are non-cellular layers that secures the overlying tissue. It is the most epithelial tissues that have a basement membrane. Epithelial tissue classifications. So the epithelial tissue is classified according to the number of cell layers and the shape of each epithelial cell. So squamous are flat-shaped, cuboidal, rows are square-shaped cells, and columnar, which are rows of tall, thin cells. We've got this little chart graph here, and they basically show them and their location and as well their function. So yeah, study it. And we have another graph here showing more of the location and the function. And by the way, the first one, a stratified cuboidal epithelium, those are actually the barrier, our skin. And by the way, your skin is the largest organ in your body. So if anyone, says you're wrong, you're right. It is the largest organ because your skin functions as an organ, and it makes up part of organ systems, makes up yourself as an organism. Simple epithelium is a single layer of cells. Stratified epithelium is more than one layer of cell. Pseudostratified epithelium is containing a single layer of cells, varying heights. All cells attached to the basement membrane, but some fail to reach the free surface, giving appearance of multiple layers. Transitional epithelium consists of layers of stratified cells that will change shape from cuboidal to squamous when the organ is stretched. Here we can see actual photos from microscopes when the cells are dyed. By the way, this is not how cells normally look. But we can see the basement, simple squamous epithelium, stratified squamous epithelium, pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium, and the transitional epithelium. You can all see here, they work, okay? Connective tissue binds other types of tissue together, such as bone, cartilage, adipose tissue, and scar tissue. This kind of stuff, it does that. Connective tissue proper, why? Connective tissues with many types of cells and extracellular fibers in a syrup-like ground substance, and dense connective tissue contains many collagenous fibers and appears white. We have loose connective tissue, which is adipose tissue, areolar tissue, and reticular tissue. Oh man, I love that word. Supportive connective tissue has a less diverse cell population and a matrix that contains many more densely packaged fibers than connective tissue proper. Protects soft tissues and carries most of or all of the body's weights. 2 types, cartilage and bone. Cartilage supports the frame and attaches to many underlying tissues of bone. Bone is just basically the framework. Yeah, you can't. If you were just a bunch of cartilage, you wouldn't be existing right now. You'd just be a heap on the floor. Good luck. Blood is contains form of elements suspended in blood plasma. Lymph is the forms as interstitial fluid enters the lymphatic vessels. That's why you have your lymph nodes. muscle tissue overlays the framework of the skeleton, classified both by the structure and function, structurally either striated or non-striated, functionally either voluntary or involuntary. Striated muscles, in which the microscopic bands or striations can be seen. Non-striated muscle without striations. Smooth muscle is non-striated, so like your stomach. Voluntary, consciously controlled, so your abdomen, you can control that. Involuntary, not normally under conscious control. It'll show that nuclei, muscle fiber, all that stuff. Fun. Types of muscle tissue: skeletal, cardiac, smooth. I love it. Striated, voluntary muscle. Most of the muscles used in volition and day-to-day activities. I love skeletal muscle. It's just so cool. Cardiac muscle is striated involuntary muscle. It's a myocardium. It's the heart. Contains less connective tissue than a skeletal muscle and relies the conduction system for contraction automatically in the ability to generate an impulse. Smooth muscle, non-striated involuntary muscle, can regenerate after injury and composes hollow internal organ walls, typically have no conscious control over the function of smooth muscle. Nervous tissue, specialized for the conduction of electrical impulses from one region to the body to the other. This contains two types of cells: neurons and neuroglia, which are glial cells. Nervous tissues. This includes the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. Peripheral nerves are all of the nerves that extend from the brain and the spinal cord. Neurons are the main conducting cells of the nerve tissue, and two projections typically extend from nerve cells, which are dendrites and axons. Each neuron only has one axon, but may have several dendrites. Dendrites receive an electrical impulse from the axons of other nerve cells and conduct them towards the cell body, and axons conduct electrical impulses away from the cell body. This is what it looks like. Cool picture of, nerves. So yeah, that's basically what it is. We have the cell body here, dendrites, axon, collateral, axon. I have never once seen I've never seen a neuron with two axons, by the way. It's just, I've never seen it. Wait, never mind. I see one with three. This is one cell body. 1, 2, 3. That's pretty cool. More you know. Organs. Various tissues work together in organs to perform tasks. Together, these components serve to pump blood through the arteries and veins of the circulatory system. The skin integumentary system contains all 4 types of tissues and is the largest organ of the body. Oh my god, I was correct. Organ systems, a group of organs that have common purpose. This includes the skeleton and muscles, circulatory system, respiratory, and nervous system. The organ system combined the various organ systems for an organism. Like I said, organism. In any individual living thing, human organism is very complex, consisting of mutually dependent organs and organ systems, like this graph shows. It shows everything that we went through in chapter 1 and before in chapter 2. So that's pretty cool. Body regions. Appendicular region. This includes the extremities and their associated girdles. Axial regions consist of the head, neck, and trunk. Appendicular region is the consists of the girdles, axial anticubitula fossa. Okay, I'm just gonna, Okay, girdles are the bony structures that attach the limbs of the body. Upper extremity that divides into the arm, forearm, wrist, and the space. Forearm, wrist, and hand, and attached to the body at the shoulder girdle. Axial inferior to the shoulder or the armpit. Anticubula fossa, bend or the crook of the elbow. Lower extremity divided into the thigh, leg, ankle, or foot, attaches the body or hip or the pelvic girdle. Popliteal fossa, the space behind the knee. Head, the scalp, is the skin layer of the head. 5 layers: skin, subcutaneous tissue, muscle, loose connective tissue, and the periosteum. I don't know how to pronounce that. So yeah, this is basically what it looks like. if you were to peel someone's, skin and bone off somehow. So if you didn't notice already, the bone actually looks kind of like a sponge because, when you were growing, it grew in plates, which is why you also see the crack right here. It grew in about, I think, 6 different parts. Axial regions, meninges, the membrane layer within the skull covering the brain, dura mater, arachnoid, pia mater, periosteum, membrane that covers the outside of the skull and all bones. Skull houses the brain. It composed of the 2 major parts, the cranium and the facial bones. Bones of the skull are connected together at the sutures. Fontenelle's length of the sutures by age of 2 years. Once again, so we have all these sutures: coronial suture, metopic suture. The head, sort of right here, that's the flattest part of your head. So yeah. Neck. The 3 major triangles lie within the neck: anterior, carotid, and posterior. Trunk is the thorax, abdomen, and pelvis. Axial region. Once again, we have a diaphragm explaining all of this. Just take a screenshot. Body cavities. Hollow areas within the body that contain organs and organ systems. We have the cranial cavity, spinal cavity, vertebral column, thoracic cavity, pelvic cavity, and they just go all the way up. Cranial and spinal cavities. Cranial cavity is the hollow portion of the skull and has a dome top and a base composed of several bones. This houses the brain and is continuous with the spinal cavity. Spinal cavity is also known as the spinal column or the vertebral canal, and the spinal cavity travels through the vertebrae and the spine. This contains the spinal cord. The muscular diaphragm divides the trunk into the thoracic and abdominal cavities. The serous membrane is a specialized form of thin connective tissue, and each membrane has 2 portions: the parietal portion and the visceral portion. The parietal portion lines the wall of the cavity, and the visceral portion covers the internal organs. Serous membranes they secrete fluid that fill the space between the visceral and the parietal membranes. This protects the organs, your internal organs, from friction. The thoracic cavity is located between the base of the neck and the diaphragm. This forms a roughly circular boundary of the rib cage. Major organs include the heart and lungs. Lungs and the pleura. Lungs are surrounded by the pleura. Pleura is a set of serous membranes. Pleural space is the space between the visceral and the parietal pleura. This cavity is only a potential space and rarely contains anything other than a small amount of lubricating fluid called the pleural fluid. Mediastinum, which is the space between the lungs. This contains the heart, trachea, main stem, bronchi, part of the esophagus, large blood vessels. Pericardial cavity is the heart surrounded by the pericardium. Pericardium is a set of serous membrane. Pericardial sac is the potential space between the serous membranes. Also rarely contains anything other than a small amount of lubricating fluid. Pericardial cavity is the region surrounding the heart. Abdominal cavity is a large single cavity that extends from the diaphragm to the pelvic bones. This is lined with a serous membrane called the peritoneum. Mesentery is a membrane double fold of tissue in the abdomen that attaches to various organs of the body wall, and it supplies blood to abdominal organs. The abdominal cavity is the abdomen that can be divided into quadrants by crossing the umbilicus, which is near your belly button, by the way, with the imaginary perpendicular lines. The umbilicus is the navel. Retroperitoneal space is the area posterior to the peritoneum space, and the kidneys, pancreas, duodenum, and major blood vessels of the abdominal cavity are located here. These structures are referred to as retroperitoneal organs. Pelvic cavity, the lower portion of the abdominal area, and this is bounded by the pelvic girdle. Ilium, ischium, pubis, sacrum, and coccyx. Strong pelvic bones provide protection for the internal organs located within it, gastrointestinal organs, reproductive organs, the urinary system. And also your pelvic bone actually does sort of protect your femoral artery, which runs around, and it's also where you find your femoral pulse. Cellular injury may result from hypoxia, ischemia, chemical injury, infectious injury, immunologic physical damage, inflammatory injury. Hypoxia may result from decreased amounts of oxygen to the air, loss of hemoglobin function, decreased number of red blood cells, respiratory or cardiovascular disease, or loss of cytosomes. Hypoxia cells that are hypoxic for more than a few seconds produce mediators that may damage other local or distant body locations. This leads to more cell damage, leads to more hypoxia, which leads to further mediator production and produces widespread, potentially deadly tissue damage. Chemical issue may be caused by poisons, leads, carbon monoxide, ethanol, pharmacologic agents, or technically radiation is also a chemical injury. Cyanide induces cell hypoxia by blocking the oxidative phosphorylation in the mitochondria and preventing metabolism of oxygen. Pesticides block the acetylcholinesterase, preventing proper transmission of nerve impulses. Infectious injury results from invasion of bacteria, fungi, or viruses. They may cause injury by direct action or by production of toxins. Viruses often initiate inflammatory responses that lead to cell damage and symptoms. Immunologic and inflammatory injury. Inflammation is the protective response that can often occur without bacterial invasion. An infection is an invasion of microorganisms that cause cell or tissue injury, leading to the inflammatory response. The immune system provides protection, and cellular membranes may be injured by direct contact with the cellular or chemical components of the immune or inflammatory process. So, phagocytes, which is the lymphocytes or macrophages, histamine, antibodies, and lymphokines. Swelling occurs when potassium leaks out of the cell and water flows inwards. The nuclear envelope, organelle membranes, and cell membranes may rupture, leading to death of the cell. Additional factors that may cause the cell injury and death include genetic factors, nutritional imbalances, and physical agents. Genetic factors, so chromosomal disorders such as Down syndrome, abnormal gene development, like gene mutation during meiosis, and heredity. Nutritional imbalances. Good nutrition is required to maintain good health and disease-fighting capabilities, and nutrition disorders that can injure a cell. Obesity, malnutrition, vitamin excess or deficiency, mineral excess or deficiency, heat, which are burns, cold, frostbite, radiation, sickness, can cause tumors, the physical agents. And those are basically all of the things that can impact your cells. There's a lot. Study them.